Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Just Do You podcast. My name is Eric Nicole, and I'm your host. If you are a first time listener, welcome to the conversation. And if you're a regular, I'm honored that you've decided to join me for another episode. The Just Do You podcast is centered around a network of conversations which are meant to connect us, to inspire us, to find our own confidence, our own voice, and to live our own truth. And who knows, we might even learn a little something new that ultimately allows us to live in the sweet spot that I like to call the just do you space of being. Each week, I have the privilege of sitting down for unscripted conversations with friends, family, colleagues, community leaders, and influencers that all share their own personal journeys. I hope that you enjoy our time together as much as I have. We are certainly going to laugh, and yes, we might even cry a little, but in the end, we're going to know that we're not alone during our life's journey. So, are you ready? Great, let's do this. Welcome to the conversation. All right, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Just Do You podcast. I am thrilled to be sitting down with not only a couple that I consider to be wonderful friends, but a couple in San Diego that I have not only the highest regard for, but am in awe of so many aspects of their life. And so I'm really excited to get them on today and talk. I'm going to just jump right in. We're going to introduce everyone to Melody and Roman Velaruz. Hi, guys.
Hi.
How are you?
Great. How you doing?
We're good. Good.
Awesome.
So this is the first time I've actually had a couple on. So this is exciting territory. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you both for being here. I really appreciate it. I know it's been a long time coming, but it is the perfect time to sit down and have a conversation, as the podcast is designed around a network of conversations of what it means to just do you, to live your authentic life, to be able to find your confidence and to find your passion and to find your voice and to find that sweet spot that I like to call that just do you space of being. And if there are two people that I know that are the epitome of this just do you space of being, it's the both of you. So we're going to sit down and talk a little bit today, not only about you, but about your advocacy and your community involvement. So we're just going to jump right in. But I will say this to our listeners. So Melody and Roman probably have a relationship that most of us aspire to have. I have never met two people more in love and more committed, but it's so natural. It's so natural. So we're going to talk about that. I'm sure that's been a journey, but they're an amazing couple. They are also heavily involved in the community here in San Diego, proud members of the LGBTQI community. We're going to talk about that. And I also want to say they are probably the one couple. I don't know how they do it, y'all, but if there is a fundraising event or a community event or an opportunity to get out there and make a difference, Melody and Roman are there. I am tired sometimes just watching them on Instagram. So, guys, I'd like to take my guests back on this podcast, on the episode, to talk a little bit about their younger self. I really believe that we start developing our key directives for our future very early on, especially those of us that are members of the LGBTQIA plus community. So we're going to start with Melody. Love you to go back a little bit and just tell us about your childhood. Where were you born? What was your family life like? Brothers, sisters, that kind of thing. If you're open to share when you came out as queer, we just love to get a little bit of background on you.
Absolutely. So I was born in Oxnard, California, which is in Ventura County, just north of LA. My four grandparents immigrated from Mexico from four different states and went to pick strawberries in Oxnard. And they found each other there, married there, had my parents there. I was actually born in the same hospital as my parents. So very
Wow.
small town farming community, mostly immigrants. And so when I was born, I'm the oldest. I have three younger sisters. And when I was born, I think they made a decision that they didn't really want to raise us there in Oxnard. They wanted a place that was more diverse, that had more opportunity. So when I was 5 years old, before I started elementary school, we moved to San Diego. So I claim San Diego as my hometown. I have big love for Oxnard, but San Diego is where I say I was raised, and it's where I have all my memories. So my parents actually divorced really early on. And so I did not grow up with really any example of what like a healthy relationship is. And I grew up in a house with all women. My grandmother came to live with us to help raise the four girls. And it was my mother, my grandmother, and myself and my three sisters. I felt like I was one of the mothers. As the oldest, I was really in a forced parent role when my grandmother and my mother were working. Both of them are really strong, stubborn as well, hardworking women. And that's just how our house ran. I was also raised Mormon, so very religious. And I was devout Mormon probably until the age of 28 when I had my son, and I'll get to that. So my whole childhood, I grew up on like Disney movies. And so I dreamt of finding my Prince Charming, and that was really in my head. I didn't really think of any other possibility for my future as far as like how it would end up. Marriage was a really big goal for me, and divorce was probably like the worst thing that I could give to my future self and my future family. And so that was just a big goal for me growing up. And then, so like I said, I was Mormon. So I did the whole thing. I went to the University of Utah. I served a Mormon mission. I got married in the Mormon temple with someone that I met on my Mormon mission. I served in Argentina. And then after getting married, we planned and had our son, who now is 15 years old. And I have a distinct memory of holding him in the when I was in the hospital after giving birth, and just thinking how unconditionally I loved this little furry baby that, like, I had no idea who he was or he would become or his personality or anything like that. And that, I think, cracked my Mormonism. And so I started thinking about God and religion in a very different way. Specifically, a big problem of mine was the LGBTQ community. Even though I was raised Mormon, there was a lot of things growing up in San Diego with the diverse culture, growing up as a kid in the 80s and 90s with the AIDS epidemic. My mom, I remember, took me to see Philadelphia when I was like much too young. And just, I remember thinking and feeling something towards the LGBTQ community, and specifically gay men who were dying of AIDS in like a crazy rate. We became obsessed with Rent as teenagers, like the Broadway musical Rent. And so there was things, even though I was Mormon, I had this like diverse, open-mindedness also in with that. And then also my loophole for Mormonism, and we always chuckle about this, my first kisses and most of my kisses growing up were with girls, because and when you're Mormon, you're taught you don't kiss boys until you're going to marry that boy. And so I was like, I want to be a good kisser when I finally get to kiss that boy. So I'm going to convince my friend that's really cute to kiss. And so but I never thought that was wrong. I never thought that was sinning. I don't know. I thought I was being a chaste little pure Mormon girl. So that was basically like my childhood. My first boyfriend was my ex-husband. So I didn't really have a lot of dating experience. And then when I got married, it was just a really bad marriage from the start. It was a bad match. We were very different people. And then I don't think we really appreciated our differences. And even though I was 24 years old when I got married, it was as if I was a 15-year-old having her first boyfriend, because I never had that experience. And so I wasn't a very good wife. He definitely wasn't a very good husband. And we didn't really give it very much time. And my son was 4 months old when I found out he was cheating on me, and it basically went downhill. And by the time my son was 2 years old, we were already officially divorced. Then at that point, I basically focused on my life, on my career, and raising my kid. And he got to be about 5 or 6 years old when I remember specifically it was Christmas. And I was like, what do you want for Christmas? And he was like, a dad who lives with us. And I was like, oh, I guess I have to start putting myself out there and dating. And so that was what so I was probably single, I don't know, 4 or 5 years post my divorce. I just had no real interest. And because of my son, I started getting just I do everything. I do everything like with my whole heart and if it's my
Mhm.
full-time job. And so I did the same thing with dating. So at the time it was like the boom of dating apps. And so that's what I did. We meet people online and at that time. And so I went hard and started going on a million first dates that were just awful, just terrible first dates. And but it was very like educational. I felt it very, I got to learn a lot about myself, which I
Mhm.
felt like at that point, and at this point I'm like 32 years old. And so it was like who I was, I feel like barely starting to form. And so the dating was really just eye opening. And after going on a million first dates and really just being dating cis males that were probably mid 30s, and it was awful. Like they either didn't have a car or a job or lived with their mom or had baby mama drama or had 8 kids and with different people, and it was just like they were just so terrible. And so the thought came to me of like, why am I casting such a small net
Yep.
of people when in reality, I don't like anybody until I do. And
Mhm.
gender really wasn't like a major factor for me. And I felt like at this time I had already left the church. And so I'm like, I think I'm straight and looking for a man because that's what I was taught as someone culturally Mexican and with this really strong religion that raised me. So I just started more thinking on my own and thinking of like outside of what like society expects of me. And so I just was like, what if I just, instead of being like, I am looking for a male, what if I just, at the time it was very binary, right? I'll look
Mhm.
for male and female and just see what happens. And my career had taken me to Long Beach. So I was living in Long Beach at the time, which is a very gay friendly town and diverse town and very similar to San Diego. And I went to a bar and I like, as the story goes, like the door opened and this girl walks in and I just was like, I am getting her number. I'm going to get to know her. And she ended up being my first girlfriend. I remember Long Beach Pride was happened to be like the weekend after. And so that's how I was able to like make sure she knew because she looked a lot like me, like she was femme. And so I was like, I don't want her to think that I'm just wanting to be friends. And so I was like, hey, do you want to go to Pride with me? And so that was just my way in. But we both did not know what we were doing, didn't know how to like navigate like a gay relationship. And to be honest, like we made out a lot and we had a year of like fun, but that was basically my first, I guess, queer relationship. And queer is how I identify. And every relationship I've had post my divorce, who was my one and only boyfriend, and I guess cis male person that I dated, it's all been queer relationships since then.
Yeah.
And that basically brings me to finally
Yeah.
finding the love of my life.
Before we get to the love of your life, I have just a question or two because I think it's interesting. So, what was the conversation internally? So, your background obviously raised very religious in the Mormon church. You also come from a relatively conservative community, Mexican, right? What was the conversation? Because I tend to feel, and maybe I'm wrong, that it's easier for a female to maybe perhaps explore her own sexuality, as you said, that kind of gender fluidity, than it is a male because of all the conversations and stigmas around that. So, was there a conversation internally that you were afraid of how you would be perceived or how you would be accepted? Or was it because it sounds very mature and very adult to say, I'm going to throw my net wider and I'm going to open myself up to the person and not the male female? Because that's a big conversation for people to have, I think. So, what was that like for you? Or was it a
So
conversation at all?
it was absolutely. I think that at that time of my life, like I mentioned, divorce to me, my entire life was like the worst thing possible. And surviving that divorce and coming out of that, just like in one piece to me was like miraculous. It was very like internally just devastating.
Hmm.
And I think that by the time One is that my mother and my grandmother are probably the most like bitter divorcees and man hating, and just their auras, like to this day, are just so negative when
Mm,
it comes to life. And I had already felt like they already disapproved of me. Like the fact that I even thought about dating while my son was under the age of
mm,
18, they thought was I was a bad mother. They literally asked me, "Why are you so concerned about dating?" And I said, "Because I feel like life is beautiful and I want to share it with someone. And I feel I want to give my son a example of a healthy relationship that I did not have." And so whatever reasons that I gave to them, like it was never like, they
mm,
never like really accepted it. And so I think that kind of dominoed into, I can't care what they think, what my more current Mormon family and friends judge of me. I can't worry about just like the acceptance, whatever the outside stuff. I can only really focus and have anxiety about really my child and myself,
mm.
and that's it.
Right.
And I felt like if I just did that, everything else would fall into place.
Yeah.
And it absolutely has. It took a long
Yeah.
time, but yes.
I think there needs to be a podcast episode called A Million Worst First Dates because we've all been
Yes.
on them.
Right. Yep.
I don't care what side of the fence you're on. There are a million and one horrible first dates. So that could be a whole podcast episode. But I'm really in awe about the conversation because if you really think about it, as we strip away all the conversations that are happening in our world right now, love is love. And at the end of the day, when you strip away all of the descriptors and all of the pronouns and all of the gender, we're human beings. And really where for me, the fundamental shift changes is when we realize that love is love. And when you find that love, it shouldn't matter who is loving you. What matters is they're there, right? The love is there, and that's the basis and the foundation for those healthy relationship. So for the listeners, our this story is going to start to take an interesting turn because now we're going to talk about Roman. So Roman, I want you to go back, give us a little bit of background, if you would be so willing, into your beginnings, and we'll go from there.
Of course. So I grew up in a small little area of Riverside County, Moreno Valley to be exact. Both my parents are from Mexico, so I'm first generation here. Growing up, it was very difficult to really be allowed, and we pretty much never had the permission to be ourselves. It was always something that my parents always had a way of us being. And so prior to my transition, it was, and my two other little sisters at the time of when I was little, it was four girls and one boy. So it was five of us. And so for me, it was very difficult, very frustrating, almost felt like my whole childhood, and even up to middle school, we won't go to that place yet, but as a child, I felt very in an eggshell. Like I couldn't really live my life as a little kid the way that I just genuinely felt very natural living. And I always gravitated towards my brother, the boy stuff. And it was difficult because my father is very macho man, and my mom follows right along that because that's her partner. So growing up, I was always separated from the boys because of, if you're a girl, you hang out with the girls. If you're a boy, you hang out with the boys. And it was very difficult for me to really even enjoy my childhood because of that. I would always find myself sneak away with my brother when my dad would go trucking for about 2 weeks. He'd be gone. And my mom had five kids at the time, so she really didn't care. It was just go do your thing. And then it came to really wondering, not wondering, but questioning, why is my dad, you're not a boy, you're a girl, all the time? It didn't make
Mhm.
sense because to me, I was a little boy. It just happened to be that I had long hair. Come to the hair, I would get these, what every Hispanic girl gets is the Dora Explorer haircut. And I
If
hated
you,
it.
yes, exactly.
Did you have a question on that?
No, I did
Okay.
not.
Yeah.
It was more a
So
comment that I'll keep to myself till later.
the Dora haircut was basically the Dora haircut. Oh, sorry. And it was probably the most uncomfortable haircut ever because it would come the day of the picture. You got to take your school picture. And that to me was so embarrassing. And I would think about it. I would sit there crying on the chair while my mom would cut my hair. Like
Mhm.
that is probably the worst trauma you can give to a kid. It's like when those little kids misbehave and they go and they shave the kid's head and he's crying, it's that. That's how I
Hmm.
felt. And so I would walk around because the haircut would be so here with bangs that I didn't like that. I wanted to look like a little caveman. I wanted my hair to grow out because the longer my hair was, the messier it was, the less I looked feminine, the less I looked like a little cute girl, even though long hair is long hair, right? But so growing up as a child, to answer your question, was very difficult for me to really actually enjoy my childhood. There'd be times when my dad would just give up at times and he would take me and my brother, just me and my brother. So it's not like I would go hang out with the boys and he was fine with that. But it would just be me and my brother, and we would go jump jumps. I would wear these baggy pants, these big old shoes, the skater shoes, and try my hardest to dress as closely as a boy possible, but still feminine because my dad was present. And so that was probably most of my childhood, even up to middle school.
Yeah, Roman, real quick. So, for those people who are listening who don't know you, obviously we have listeners all around the world. So, you were born a girl, right?
Yeah.
And so I want that to resonate with the people that are listening, because your transition story is really remarkable, and it
Thank
really
you.
is an incredibly powerful story. And then add the component of the relationship into that. I want people to listen to this episode from the perspective of the relationship that you two are in, and not look at what their concept or their construct of what a relationship is. Does that make sense? So I wanted to make sure people
Yeah.
understood that you were born a girl. You will ultimately in your life transition to Roman. So I just wanted to make that clear. So when was the first time, or what was it that you said to yourself when you were that young and realized, did you question why you felt uncomfortable in your own skin, that you wanted to dress more like a boy? Did you question it, or was it just something that was so palpable within you that it was hard to fight off? I want people to understand what that feels like as a young child.
Yeah, so basically my questioning was never why do I feel this way, because that's just, how
Good
I
point.
was born. I
Sure.
was born feeling like a boy. I never felt like a girl. So when I was isolated, it didn't make sense because I wasn't, yes, my dad would isolate the boys and the girls, but I didn't know gender. I didn't know
Mhm.
what all that really meant. So I was living my entire life wondering, why am I being told that I'm a girl when I'm a boy? Then it's okay, I don't have the parts that my brother has. My brother doesn't have the parts that I have. Okay, now I get it. But as a child, there's no words that you can really put. There's no
Right.
thoughts. There's no understanding to that. To me,
Right.
I just didn't understand why I would be so isolated. And so that was a question to me, to myself, like, why is this happening to me? Oh, because you were born in a girl's body. And so that to me was just, I get those questions a lot. And sometimes it's really hard to answer because I never sat back and said, huh, what's going on? It was always like,
Mm.
oh man, I wish I looked like a boy because I'm a boy, but I was born a girl. My dad's facial features or his hair, he had this beard, this mustache that I just would be so fascinated on combing and stuff that I told this story on Thursday how I would pluck out his white hairs in such like fascination of wishing that was my hair. And then I would run to the
Mm.
bathroom with the same comb, bending it, pretending like I had hair. And me and my sister would take turns and they would ask me, what are you doing in the bathroom? What are you doing? And I would come out with these red cheeks because I would just be
Mm.
combing and there's nothing. It's bare. I was little. I was like 6, 7, 8 years old. So the question was more, why am I being isolated from the boys? And you would
Mhm.
always find me sneaking off with the boys all the time.
Mhm. So when you stuck up with the boys, what was the feeling? Like, what was the emotion? Did you feel at peace? Did you feel
Heck yeah.
complete? Yeah.
It was like, all right, time to live. I was happy. But when my dad would pull me away from that, it was such a depressing thing. Like I
Mhm.
had, to me, if I was not hanging around with the boys, to me, I had no life. I remember just sitting by myself. My dad used to have this bar inside the garage with these stools, these big old bar stools. I would open the garage and just watch my brother hang out with his friends because my dad was home, so couldn't hang out with my brother. And I would just chill, listen to music, and just watch nature go by because I had no other desire of doing anything else. You would never see
Mhm.
me play with dolls. You never see me do my hair. You never see me do my makeup or want to play with anything, let alone do anything with nails as a child. So that was how my life went as a kid.
Yeah. When did you start to have the conversation with yourself or the thought of transitioning?
Oh man, as an adult,
Okay.
yeah, like I was 19 years old When I found out that was even a possibility, I was scared out of my mind. I was super like, oh my God, what is going on? How is this even possible? I don't even know. And before we get to that, it was a process of, okay, I like girls as a girl, I like girls. And so when I came out as a lesbian to my family, to me, that was a little tester of what was really going deep down inside. So when I found out I was able to transition was at 19. Prior to
Mhm.
that, let's backtrack because your question was when did you start having conversations with yourself? Anywhere between 17 to adulthood. So I came out as a lesbian to my mom when I was 17 years old by a note that she found on the table. And I let my mom know, I do like women. That's never going to change anything between you and I. So for me to come out as trans, coming out as a lesbian was like the soft entrance to
Sure.
coming
Sure.
out as a trans man.
Sure. I think it's important. One of the reasons I really wanted to do this podcast and some of the feedback that I've gotten is that it opens people's eyes and their minds a little bit because
Yeah.
there are so many misconceptions. There are so many assumptions. And I'm speaking to both of you. There's many assumptions about representing as queer. What does that mean? They want to define it. They want to know what that exactly means. And I think what's important to have them understand is this is all personal to you. This is personal to the individual. And I think we struggle as a society to have to understand it as opposed to respect it. To me, it's a very different conversation. Understanding and respect are very different things. And so when I'm listening to both stories, here you are both kind of living these separate lives in these moments of growing up in your youth. You're both on completely different trajectories, but end up in the same community.
Right.
So I can hear people saying, oh, this doesn't make sense. How does it make sense? And I say very directly, it doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have
Right.
to. Because what's important to you and what makes you feel you and what gives you that sense of confidence, both of you, is special to each of you. My coming out process was very different. Everyone's journey is their journey. So I remember interviewing, and I think I told you both about Archer when he shared a similar story of his transition. And the first time that he ever felt complete and whole and alive was when he worked at the Cheesecake Factory because he got to wear those white pants, the white shirt, and a tie. And the minute he put
Yeah.
that tie on, he felt like a boy and it completely changed his life. And so I don't know that a lot of people will be able to wrap their head around it. We notice in today's current environment that they're not wrapping around their head or with their heads
Yeah.
around it very easily. But I just want to acknowledge both of you for having the courage, and because it does take courage on both your parts, but having the courage and the wherewithal to push yourself through all of the negativity, all of the backlash, all of the conversations to find your true happiness. Because if what I, and listen, we all have things happen in our lives, right? We all have circumstances, we all have things we have to get through, but those circumstances don't define us. But when I watch the two of you in relationship now, what doesn't play into my mind is the journey that you both were on to get to those places, right? But that journey is really important because many people don't have the opportunity to explore themselves. And I think
Right.
we see the result of that. So when I say I'm proud of the both of you, it's certainly an uplifting and not condescending proud of that you found this journey. Again, for our listeners to put the pieces together now. So Roman is now in this process of transitioning from female to male. Melody obviously has been married, has had a child, has explored her own sexuality, and is identified as queer. When you both met, what was that like? Take me there.
We have different stories. Even that, no, honestly, it's
Sure.
very different stories. I was single. I was about 3.5 years single from a very toxic relationship. And when I met Melody, it was just through a friend, and she was, first of all, when I saw her Instagram, I was like, oh my gosh, she's just, wow, goodness gracious. And when I found out she was in a relationship, I'm like, oh, what a bummer. Let me stay away because I'm a better person and I don't want to take anyone's girlfriend. But anyway, so when I physically met Melody, I fell in love immediately. I had already really found her very attractive on social media, but seeing her in person was just my heart was coming out of my chest. And as a trans man, or as a lesbian moving on to a trans man, and before I knew I can transition, having a same sex from even with men to men, women to women, you think about that family you can have. It's two girls and a baby, right? And so I never thought that I would be in such a great relationship as a trans man with another woman, a cis woman. And so for me, it was just love at first sight, and I could not get her out of my head. So that's just real
Understandable.
quick.
Understandable. Understandable. Melody, go ahead.
No, I wanted to say that's remarkable about his journey that he's not mentioning is that he's a relationship guy. And so from the time that he was in high school, he was in relationship after relationship without leaving any time in between.
Never left any time in between.
Closure.
Yeah.
And so the fact that he was single for so many years before meeting me, I feel like that's a significant part of the story because I feel like he was at a point with himself, with his life's journey, with his just like process that gave us helped in the success of our relationship.
Yeah.
And she is the first partner to be with after my transition. So I have.
And I apologize. I jumped the gun a little bit because I got excited about talking about the relationship that I love. So we're going to go back just a little bit. Had you transitioned when you met Melody, or when did that transition for you start?
Yeah. So I transitioned in May 9th, 2019 in Texas, Austin, Texas.
Wow.
And that's when I started my transition that day. Yeah, by taking my shot. So I had already, maybe about 2 or 3 months before that, I had this gay boss, a really great guy, and he started to hear me on the phone say, "Hi, this is Roman. How can I help you?" with my girl voice, because I hadn't started. And then there would be times where he would say, "Hey, I called the other day and you said that your name was," because my biological name that I don't consider dead is right, Giselle. And so he was like, "You go from Giselle to Roman. So I just want to ask you, like, do you want to be called Roman? Because we can all change that today." And that was the day that my life changed. And I think I mentioned he was a gay guy. So it was so nice for him to have opened that space up for me. And then after that, I just felt so empowered. And 2 months later, I made my appointment to go get my T-shot. I had already started going to therapy like 2 weeks after he said that. And my therapist was a trans man. And he asked me all these questions. And so he was like, "You don't need to wait 6 months. I'm going to give you your letter, and this is where you're going to go. This is where you're going to go get your T-shot." And that was that. So that's when I started to transition.
When you hear that there's conversations out there, and we don't have to go down the rabbit hole too much, but I'm just curious because you obviously had a very different experience than some. So what is your feeling when you hear some people say that young kids are transitioning, and you hear that it's happening? We all know the process that it takes to go through to start the transition. What do you say to that?
I'll be honest, because all of this, regardless of me being trans or not, it was new to me. All of everything that's been going on when non-binary first came out, I didn't understand that. When puberty blockers came out, I didn't understand that. But now, being in my body now, I am thinking back and even talking about my childhood, I wish that I would have had that opportunity, because the mental struggle that I went through was just so emotionally messed up. And I'm getting emotional. Excuse me. It was
okay.
hard,
I cry through lots of podcasts. Don't worry.
It was very hard. I am so ashamed and disappointed that this is even something that's being taken away from the kids. If the kids are truly, and the youth are truly something that are going to be used as, we got to take care of our kids, taking that away from them is not taking care of our kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's actually damaging them more.
Yeah. And it's something that I think I just can't wrap my head around what's happening. Yeah. And I know none of us can. And I want to say thank you for that vulnerability, because that honesty, because I think that's really important. I think that there are so many assumptions out there. And even for me, when I came out, I've known since I was 8 years old. I didn't come out till I was 24. And small family, did not grow up in a strict religion. I grew up here in LA, but I was terrified to come out. My mom was a teacher and my grandparents were very involved in the community, and I was terrified. I was in love with my best friend, didn't understand why. And even that was difficult. I didn't have to then compound on that and have a conversation about not feeling comfortable in my body and understanding what that is. So I give you and the members of the trans community so much love and support of having to have that on top. So yes, the kids that are going through it today are at great risk. And it's only by people like you sharing your story and having us have it out and live out in the world is what's going to make the difference. So I appreciate that.
Of
So
course.
obviously, Melody, Roman described how he felt when he saw you on your Instagram, which I'm a gay male. I still felt the same way. I'm like, damn, she is fine, this girl. Whew.
Yeah,
I,
no,
I
my
was asked a
story.
question that I wasn't sure if I should, if I was straight, you'd be my type. I wasn't quite sure that I would be yours. But anyway, so
Oh, I love it.
so what was your thought when you first saw Roman?
My story is very different because I was
It's actually very funny.
in a relationship when I first met him. And so I consider myself very loyal, especially considering what has happened to me. I've never cheated on anyone. And so the day that I met Roman for me was just it was at Gossip Grill, which is our local lesbian gay bar, which I frequented, still frequent. We met there and it was also via a mutual friend. And so to me, he was just another person cool person that I'm going to meet. For me, though, what did leave an impression really was just his vibe. I just remember thinking, like, I want him to be in my circle. Like, I want to spend more time with him. I want to get to know him more. I should actually mention that I did find out his age, and we actually have a big age gap. I'm quite a bit older than him. It's like almost 12 years, it's 11 and a half years. And I realized that he was really young, which I mentioned because I feel like that has been like a topic in our relationship and in trying to figure out how to make our relationship work. So I mentioned that for that reason. But I just remember after that night telling my friend, you need to invite him again. Like he needs to hang out with us again. And so I actually met him just a few months before he had top surgery. And another big thing that is a big memory of mine before we got together and what was a lasting impression, and that just confirmed to me that he was like my people, was that it was actually March, Trans Day. It was March of 2022, and it was Trans Day of Visibility, like Trans Month, right? And he was asked to speak at the Trans Flag race in Hillcrest. And he was like 2 days after recovering from top surgery. And so he was like literally bandaged and hurting. And he went and spoke and talked about his journey. And I wasn't physically there because I couldn't get the time off of work, but I remember watching it live on the live feed on Instagram and being just in awe of him and just being like, wow, like this is an incredible, remarkable human who like I am. Between the time I met him and that time, I felt like I hadn't spent as much time as I would have wanted with him because I did not know that he had found me attractive. I did not know that he was purposely staying away in order for me to just stay focused in the relationship that I was in. And so it wasn't until 2 months later, so that was March, in May of 2022, my partner at the time, we were living together. I came home and all of their stuff was gone.
Oh,
And
wow.
so we hadn't had a fight. There wasn't anything to lead to that. It was just, I came home and they were gone. And so it was a really abrupt end of the relationship. And I took it really hard. And it was about, I don't know, like a month and a half. And then my friends were like, okay, you've been crying enough. Like, you need to come out. I'm an extreme extrovert. I love people. The way that I heal is, I think, dancing and just being with my favorite people. And so I went out and I got to dance with Roman for the first time. And I could not believe the butterflies I felt that day. And I guess like the rest of his history, and that we were inseparable. And for me, what was remarkable is that I'm the opposite. Every relationship I've always had minimally like a year and a half of like singlehood in between. For me, it's like super important because I've always dated like to marry. Like that's how I
Hmm.
was raised, right? When I would date these people, I was all in. And then when it would end, which it wouldn't end because I would want it to end, so it would end for whatever
Yeah.
reason. And for me, I would always take this time. And that time for me was the only time where I was in a relationship and literally like month two, I was in another relationship, which was so unlike me, but it just, I felt it was just the way that it was meant to be.
Well, and that's evident. There is an energy around the two of you, whether it's on social media or in person, even more. There's an energy between the two of you that I don't think I can explain. And I'm not saying that to
Mm.
butter you up. I don't need to. You're incredibly self-confident, but there's something about the two of you and this energy that you share that is remarkable. And yet, again, I say this because all relationships go through things. We all have circumstances that test us, especially in trying times like we're in. But I look to you both and your relationship and the love that you have for each other and that commitment that you have and that ability to just be change makers in our world. I look up to that so drastically. I've been single now for 5 or 6 years after my divorce, which, girl, you and I can go talk about it another time. I'm not yet ready to talk about it online, but it's devastating. And it's
Yeah.
taken me 4 or 5 years to get past something that I had no control over. And yet, again, dating in this world in your 50s is a whole other story, which will soon become a book. But I'm really proud of you both for digging deep and for staying committed to each other. You have a beautiful family, you have a beautiful home. I think the thing that impresses me the most about you is how philanthropic and how committed you are to the community. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So you both attend almost every event that I think I see out there. Why is that important to you to be visible? And is there an intention behind it?
You want to go first?
Sure. I was going to say, I think we have different answers that end up going
Sure.
together. For me, to be honest, I credit the Mormon church. Their culture is like service. And so I just grew up like just doing like community service. And
Mhm.
then like I was a candy striper when I was in high school, and just like volunteerism was just ingrained in me. I believe through the church, it was just like normalcy. And then I actually do credit with like my exposure, like when I watched Philadelphia and Rent or whatever. I came out so late in life, in my 30s, almost mid 30s, that I feel this debt to the elders of the LGBTQ community and those who came out anytime before I
Mhm.
did 7, 8 years ago or when I came out, that I feel that because they lived out loud and they marched and they fought and they donated and they did all the things, that for me, I'm able to love a man who was able to go through all the transition steps and change his name legally and do all the things that are able to have him be this most authentic, wonderful, beautiful human being that I got to fall in love with. And if it wasn't him that I ended up, if it was another female or if it was a non binary person, I just felt that I can't just sit back and just reap the benefits. I just feel there's more to be done, and I want to be a part of it because I think it's just this beautiful, powerful juggernaut of a, what's the word I want to use? Just movement.
Yeah. And it's something that what how I see it, and then Roman, I want to get your side. I see it as the more visibility that our community
Mm-hmm.
can have, not only in the conversation around the trans community, all the acronyms is such a diverse and such a beautiful thing that the more visibility that we have, not only to our own community, because let's face it, sometimes our own community needs to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think the more visibility we can have, the more transition of a conversation or an assumption happens. And I think that's why I see you guys out. And it's so important when you are out in the community because people do see the two of you They may not know the whole backstory. They don't need to, but they see the two of you out and your conversations live out in our world, in our community anyway. And I just think it's really important. I think it's super powerful. And I think it's super powerful for those of us that are single that go to these events too, because I am a firm believer in relationships. I miss not being in a relationship. But at 58, I know that the relationship that I'm going to be in will take time, that it will take time to nurture, that it's not going to be because I was that guy a long time ago who went from one relationship to the next.
Right.
But in between the two greatest loves of my life were 7 years in between each, because not only did I need to heal, but I also needed to find myself and find my voice and to find my place as I continued to go through my own process. And I can honestly say at 58, I'm more proud now than I was when I came out at 24. I'm more proud now because we have this opportunity to embrace the full broad range of diversity within our community, despite what anyone wants to do to our community now. So, Roman, when you are out and you are asked to speak or you are out publicly, what does that do for you? How does that make you feel knowing that just by you, by you being Roman, that the lives of other people that are contemplating transition or in transition or have questions about it can see that representation matters? What does that feel like for you?
It feels really empowering, really. But also, I'll backtrack a little bit. When I started to transition, or
Hmm.
even the thought of, and even like a little bit prior to meeting Melody, I did not want to be known as a trans man. I actually wanted to
Hmm.
just be known as a cis man, and I didn't want to. I was hiding. I was hiding, and so the more I hid, the more there was this like uncomfortable feeling. What are you doing? Like, why? You're so successful. You've done this on your own. If you look at your history of your life, you should be like throwing it out there, because there's a lot of people that need to hear this in order for them to see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So it was, to me, I felt like I was like not servicing the community that I was a part of. I was doing more disservice than anything by not being visible, even though it's scary. Still to this day, it's still scary. But it was so that I started to come out and really be visible and go to these events and be more open to it, because I want other trans folks as well to see that life is possible, to be a professional, to be a family member, to be a partner to someone, and even like a stepdad to Diego. Like those things to me are what needs to be put out there, because I am trans. And that is my work every single day, is to show myself as much as possible. However, I am still very careful. So I just started this new job. This company is very open to anyone, but even then, I slowly come into that. But for me, the most important part is to be visible to our community so they can see. And this is the second time that I really get to open up and talk about my life. When I did the raising of the flag, I didn't talk about my life. I talked about my profession of being in housing and being a property manager at the time for maybe, I think it was 8, 7 years or so. And now it's been 10. And so that to me was okay. Why did I get into property management? Because I saw my mom as an immigrant be treated unfairly. Then when I was in property management, I started to see people from Haiti getting treated unfairly, Black people, and now the LGBT community out in Texas was horrible. And so it kept me there. And so for me to do all of that work and not show our community, our trans community, that we can be amazing people. We are amazing people. It's just we need to be visible. We can't be hiding
Hmm.
under a rock. So that's pretty much my reason of showing up in a nutshell, really.
Yeah, I got to be a witness to that kind of shift for him in his mindset. When we first started dating, I did feel like it was a safe space to fly under the radar. He
Sure.
obviously, quote unquote, we don't like the word passing, but he could pass as a cis male, and he could easily just go through life with that privilege, because we do recognize that we look like a straight cis heterosexual couple to anyone that doesn't know our stories or know us, and that we could just do that. But going back to what I said, as far as I feel this big uh, gift that we received in that also makes me want to be able to pave the way for
Right.
future people, and
Sure.
specifically the trans community. I would love to have every cis femme hetero woman to be able to consider, date, a trans man, your life will change forever. They are super special, divine human beings. I wish I could convince all cis femme women to do that. But so that was a lot of conversations as far as we can't sit back, especially in the time that we are now, and just like live life under the radar. We more than ever have to be loud and proud. We have to give, we donate monthly, we give of our time, we have our favorite organizations that we give to. So that's just, those were major conversations in the very beginning of our relationship,
Yeah.
that we had to get in line, aligned with.
Yeah. Two things come to mind. One is I've always said there's two groups of people you don't piss off, moms and the LGBTQ community. And I think we're a little pissed off right now. So
Yeah.
we're going to fight back. But
Mhm.
I have to admit, you said something that kind of sparked a memory. When I first met you both, I thought you were a straight couple.
Yeah.
I had no idea until we started to get to know each other. And then when I started Outpro here in San Diego, and I think that's the first time, I feel like I've known you guys for a decade, but I think that's one of the first times that I met you. I thought, oh, what great allies showing up to our party. Because I was so adamant about when they asked me to start the organization, I'm like, I can't just start another cisgendered gay white male networking group that stands around a bar and eats cube cheese. It's just not networking. I said, if we start an organization where it's open to every member of the acronym and the acronym actually shows up, then we can start it. And I think we did that and we're successful at that. But I remember that first time meeting you, I thought, oh, that's so great. These wonderful allies of our community have just shown up. And then someone said to me, okay, here it comes admission time. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I actually said to a friend of mine who was there, I'm like, God, Roman is so hot. And they knew the story and they said, yeah, they have an amazing relationship. He's trans. I said, I'm sorry, what? I had no clue. And it was
Well,
the eye. It's the eyes, Roman. It's the eyes that got me for
it's
the
the
first
eyes,
time.
gotta
So,
flutter the
eyes.
eyes. That's how it was when Melody and I first met. She thought I was a gay boy. She thought that and she didn't know. And this brings me back to us having, as a community, having to either do our homework or get educated. And also, our community is also very judgmental.
Oh,
And I think it's a time now more than ever for us not to judge if an actual hetero couple does come in to our bars. Of course, we need to be careful. However, we continue to come in, and honestly, we got a lot of new gay babies in the bars that are looking at us like, what the hell? And it's, wait, sweetheart, no, you don't, first of all, this is our house. So let me give you some backstory, but we got to be more open
mhm.
to the people that come in that we don't know, because
Right.
I still go into the bar that I used to go to when I was a lesbian, a little nervous because people think that her and I are just coming in as heteros. And then they see like everyone say hi to us, the bartenders, the DJs, and then they're like, oh, and it's, yeah, take a step back, because you have to remember that we're in such crazy times right now. There is no room for judgment. Protect yourself,
Mhm.
absolutely, protect the community, but we are the community. So that's a really
Well,
big thing there.
yes. And I've said this on several other podcasts when I interviewed a mutual friend of ours, Yinka Freeman. But we said during that podcast, it fascinates me the relationship that our own community has with members of our own community.
For
And
sure.
again, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole today because that's a whole other
Right.
conversation. But I do really feel that I live in this world in which, pull away what's happening right now in our country, I live in a world where we can be obviously free to be ourselves, whatever that looks like in whatever community we're in. And the conversation that exists is, oh, I'd love to hear your story. What's your story? What's your background? And we embrace those conversations. That's the world that I live in. And I think we're blessed when we find our tribe and we find our community that we're actually able to have that. But I'll admit, for the first time, I'm, like I said, 58. For the first time, I've been out now 20, long time, 30 some years. But I'm also finding myself a little nervous in this current
Yeah.
climate,
Right.
being a gay man. And so I can imagine, with all of the emphasis being put on the trans community, it disheartens me and makes me sad when I see some members of our own community start to turn and start to ask questions and start to not even include the T in the acronym. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, but I'd be curious to know, because I think, for how I see it, this is just my opinion, is that it's just more of the unknown. It's more of the
Right.
unknown, and it's more about education. It's more about finding out about the person. And so I don't know if you have a
Right.
comment on that, but I'd love to hear if you do.
For me, I've been discriminated against by a gay cis man that was my boss. And unfortunately, it's unfortunate. And we, it's a story that I don't really want to go into,
No,
but
right.
it's happened. It's definitely been a thing. And for me, I just feel like we can do two things. We can let it damage us, we can educate and move on. Those are the two things because I feel that if I can't kill myself over educating someone that's a freaking brick wall, you're either going to get it or you're not. And if you don't want to get it, then it sucks that you're part of our community. However, that doesn't mean I'm going to stop fighting. Going to be someone out there that's going to understand. That's not what I mean either. However, I got a lot going on. I got my rights being taken away, and I'm not going to focus on Joe Schmo not understanding what's going on when he's
Right.
being judged as well, and he's
Yeah.
being criticized as well. It's so you're going to turn your back and do that to me. So I think it's a lot of people that have not been able to heal their childhood or their adulthood. We got grown men that are being beat up because they're gay. We got grown men that look like they're gay, but they're not, and they're still getting picked on. So we're just living right now in a world where we have to be kind, we have to be sweet, whether you get it or not. And if you don't, then, just go live your life. And it sucks. It sucks, but that's the reality of it. Sometimes you're not going to be able to get to those people that are just so freaking stubborn and don't want to understand. So it's
So
difficult.
let me ask you both, because I think this has been an interesting conversation in some of the podcast episodes, and you can answer as briefly as you like, but what do you think the people that are coming after the community so vehemently afraid of?
I mean, that the way that they were brought up is no longer going to be the same. You
Mhm.
got people that are just, I don't know, I know the word, but it's not going to come out, that are raised in such a conservative way that you can't break that. It's like teaching an old dog new tricks. That's real to humans as well. You cannot
Mhm.
break that. And sometimes you can, and sometimes you cannot. It's disappointing. And to me, again, we are going through so much right now that we have to protect our emotions, our energy, and it's really hard to go into depths of what's going on with them because at the same time this is all new to them really. Maybe they've seen some of these things back in the past, or maybe they haven't. It's been years of gaps that they haven't seen such, so they don't know how to accept. And but then you got a leader that is a leader and is not on our side, so it empowers them to feel the way they feel.
Mhm.
They think that they're right. They think that being trans is incorrect. They think that same-sex marriage is incorrect. I know trans folks that have been fully disowned from their parents at young ages, and they are freaking successful. They are making money left and right, and it's why are you disowning them? They're so great. They're doing such great impacts on this world that's so positive, and there's no need for that. But it's that dumb mindset, that
Yeah.
mindset that they don't want to break, and that's so unfortunate. And that's the most simplest way we can put it.
Yeah.
But do you have
I
anything
don't,
on that?
yeah. Melody, do you want to add to that?
I think what came from what he said is just hurt
Hmm.
people. And I think that people are also afraid of just like the unknown. I think that I say that trans people are divine. And I think that the reason trans people are so special is because they have figured out what this life is about. And that's
Hmm.
just to figure out who you are, love yourself in like the most loudest way that you can, and have like radical self-love. And I think that's scary for a lot of
Hmm.
people.
I
Yeah.
asked Bambi Salcido the same question, and I thought her answer was brilliant. I want to put it on a t-shirt. But she said that she feels that the people who are coming at the trans community so harshly is because they really resent the fact that the trans community in particular is living their lives
Right.
unapologetically and
Yes.
authentically, and they cannot. And so, therefore,
Mhm.
they come at anyone who is
Mhm.
different and living their lives. Yeah, great answer for both of you. All right, I have a couple final questions before we wrap this up. Melody, what's your favorite thing about Roman?
Oh my gosh. Like physically or personality?
That's your answer, not mine.
I'm gonna say something that no one else is going to be able to like take advantage of, but it's a smell. He smells amazing at all times. The guy will like go on a hard day of work and then come home and do an hour of gym, and then I still will hug him and sniff him, and he just smells so good. I just love his smell. So it's his fault.
Oh, that's amazing. That's
Mine,
amazing.
mine would be her patience and understanding. And that's not to get deep, but that's huge, let alone her Colgate smile. But that to me is huge because I've never had a girlfriend that was so patient and understanding. And that allows me to really be myself and live my true self as well.
Mm. Oh, now you guys are gonna make me cry. Wow. Wow. So again, you guys literally are inspiration to me. And so thank you for taking some time to be on today. I think we could definitely have you both back. There's so much to talk about. And I think as we go through this next year, you guys are always welcome to come join. But I do have a final question for both of you, and then I'm going to wrap up with another question. But what's next for you guys? What do you see the next couple years being for Melody and Roman?
Marriage.
Yeah, we want to make it legal. So
Yeah.
we've been together this year, 3 years together. And
Big.
yeah, we're not in a rush for anything, but putting it on paper and being legally husband and wife, I think is our next step.
I'm not inviting myself, but I'm going to sit in the back of in the back of the place. I'm going to be there. That's a
Man,
wedding
that
I
got
have to
me.
see.
You are invited.
Just hearing her say husband and wife got me very choked up right now.
Yeah. I it moves me. I think I thought you guys were already married. So that's just the
Just
space
promise
that you,
rings.
promise rings. Hey, listen, these
Yeah.
days that's amazing. All right, so I'm going to ask you one final question individually. I always ask this at the end of my episodes with my guests. So I'm going to start with Melody. Melody, if you could go back to young Melody, what would you tell her about her life today?
Oh, that it all works out better than you can ever imagine.
Mm.
Roman, if you could go back to that young child and the conversation that you were having, what would you tell them about your life today?
I would tell her to hang in there, continue to love yourself, and continue to believe that little spark inside because you're not wrong. Who you are deep down inside is now who I am, and we made it, and we are making it.
And you will continue to do. Thank you both for taking some time to give us a little glimpse into your life. I wish everyone had the opportunity to be in your space. The world is a better place with the both of you in it. And I'm so grateful that you both take the stand that you take and have the commitment to the community, not only here in San Diego, but at large. Stand is palpable and powerful and makes a difference. And so I want you to know that you are both incredible in my eyes, and I'm super blessed to know you. And I'm really fortunate to get to cross paths with you guys every once in a while at an event and every now and then at dinner. So thanks for taking the time to be with us today. And you're just very much appreciated.
We love you.
I love you guys too. We'll see you soon. All right. Thanks for being
All
here.
right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. All right, everyone. Thank you again for joining us on today's episode. I hope our conversation resonated with you like it did me, and I cannot wait to sit down with you all again next week. Remember to subscribe to the Just Do You podcast on your favorite platform so you can make sure not to miss a new episode, which drop every Thursday. If you like what you hear, you can easily share the podcast and episode directly with your friends. And if you would, rate us and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. You can also follow us on Instagram at Just Do You Pod. As you go out into the world today, remember to just do you. All right, talk next week.